Hi there, it's Alexandra from the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and we've got the High Summer Garden Tour, plus a look at a couple of plants that have taught me a lot about gardening, so I hope they might help you too. But first, the weather. This garden is a walled town garden. It's about 100 feet long and 80 feet wide at its widest. It's an L shape, and we're in southeast England in Kent. And the temperatures have been quite average for this time of year. It's been like 21 Celsius, 70 Fahrenheit. And the weather equates very much to about a zone 9, USDA zone 9, 8B, because we don't get very cold winters. But it has been so dry for the last 6 weeks. And then last week, the heavens opened and we finally got rain, which was a bit difficult for me because I was going to Hever Castle Gardens to talk to head gardener Neil Miller about how to grow roses. Hever Castle has got one of Britain's most famous rose gardens, although of course it's most famous of all for being the childhood home of Anne Boleyn, who was Henry VIII's fated second wife and the mother of Queen Elizabeth I. And I had a great talk about roses with Neil, but I'll have to go back next week to photograph them because really roses in the rain can't be photographed. But Neil did give me some tips for deadheading roses, which is one of the most important things you can do at this time of year. So we'll go over to Neil for those deadheading roses tips.
Right, again, here we are, kind of in the rose garden. Deadheading is probably one of the most important things of the maintenance you should do with your rose. Deadheading actually kind of promotes new buds. So here we can see one here that has actually gone over now. That's no good at all. You need to prune it. You've got some nice, sharp, sterilised secateurs. Hold the things, and it's very straightforward. You just prune it down to the first leaf axil, as you see there. And as soon as you've done that, that will then shoot again and promote another flower. But more often you do that, you do not want the roses to actually go to seed. When a rose starts to go to seed, it kind of says, well, that's it for the year. And this is the floribunda, or the multi kind of clustered rose. And as you can see here, rather than having one stem and one flower, it's one stem and lots of flowers. These, again, we kind of would prune them rather than individually, but these ones we would actually kind of take them down much further. Probably again, I wouldn't take out, like I did with the hybrid tea, I was taking them out down here. I would take them right down to that leaf axis there. So you take the whole lot off on these particular. You may have a few left, a few that haven't actually gone over, but that will really encourage new growth. So rather than just snipping off the little top ones, if you do that, they won't repeat flowering, but you need to take off a slightly larger chunk.
And the full video will come next week. So the plants that are really big in the garden at the moment are Crocosmia and Acanthus mollis. And I'll start with the Crocosmia. That's the red flower that you see across the main border and along here down my shady border. Crocosmia is a corm and it comes from South Africa, so it loves a sunny spot. And right plant, right place is one of the most important bases on which you can start to garden. If you know what the weather is like, what the aspect is like in a particular part of your garden, and you buy the right plants for that, you will always be much more successful than just plopping any plant anywhere. When we moved into this house 17 years ago, the Crocosmia was blazing red along this wall. And I didn't know about it then because I didn't know much about gardening, but this is actually a north-facing wall and it's dry shade. It's got trees in it. There is no way Crocosmia should be happy here. And as I developed my own gardening style, I decided I wanted this particular border to be green and white. So I dug up the Crocosmia and I put it into the sunny border, where, as you can see, it's been really happy. But I must have left a few corms behind because it persisted in coming back very vigorously in the dry, shady border. So the next thing I thought I'd do is I plant it in a border which has partial shade because I didn't have enough blooms there. And I thought, well, this plant is obviously going to flower anywhere. So I put the Crocosmia on the back border, which is east facing. And although there is more sun there, it never flowered. The plant grew, it just never flowered. Which shows you that right plant, right place is always the best place to start. But you can try experiments. You can try and put a plant somewhere where perhaps it shouldn't be happy, and it may be happy. Just keep an eye out on how happy it is. If it starts getting very leggy or you don't have many flowers, then it probably needs to be moved to another spot. But on the other hand, you can never take that for granted. And the Crocosmia, for some reason, did not want to live in my back border. So I sometimes feel the plants really run this garden, and I really have very little to do. I'm just there kind of the person who sorts things out for them occasionally. The second plant that's looking great in the garden at the moment, and which has taught me quite a lot, is Acanthus mollis. Now, if you look along this back border, you can see 4 clumps of Acanthus mollis. They're the spiky plant. They're also called bear's breeches. And the 3 right-hand clumps are very white and distinctive, and you can kind of almost not see the left-hand clump, and that's because it has purple tinges on its leaves, on its bracts, and on its flowers. And that is the classic traditional Acanthus mollis. And it's very invasive, and there are certainly people in gardens around here who just won't have it in their garden because it goes everywhere and it's really difficult to eradicate if you want to dig it up. And indeed, I did not plant that particular clump. The 3 white Acanthus mollis are called Rue Le Dan, and they're quite an unusual variety. I bought them from sarahraven.com, and they took a while to establish, about 2 or 3 years before they looked good. But now they're great, and they're not invasive. And what this taught me is that unusual plants aren't necessarily difficult to grow. They may be difficult to find, but they're not difficult to grow. And indeed, they may be better than the standard plants you can get anywhere. I've done a video on this, interviewing the horticulturalist Stephen Ryan, and I'll put that in the description below because that'll give you a bit more insight on buying unusual plants. But broadly speaking, you buy unusual plants from the people who grow them, and that is the specialist nurseries who sell plants online, plant fairs, and also when you visit gardens, and often they've got a few plants for sale, and very often those will be the slightly more unusual species. But it is really worth looking into it, that buying unusual plants isn't just about plant snobbery and having something that someone else hasn't got. It just may be a better plant that just isn't widely available. And of course, we've got the roses, a full thing on how to grow roses, talking to Neil Miller, coming up on the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel, plus dry gardens and a lovely wildlife garden in town. So if you'd like more tips, ideas and inspiration for your garden, then do subscribe to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.